My name is Jio Morfin. I go by Jio Morfin. I'm a professional tattoo artist, and my general job duties as a tattoo artist is pretty much I wake up and draw for my appointment. I'll get to the shop, start setting up my station, wait for my client to get there, talk about the design a little more because more chances than others, they like to change the designs last minute. So be prepared for that. Yeah, and then after that, just continue with the tattoo process, make the tattoo, make them happy, make them look a lot cooler. So yeah. As far as schooling for tattooing goes, there's not really like a tattoo school. Well, they kind of started creating them, but in the tattoo industry, tattoo culture, they're kind of like looked down upon just because it's nuts. That's not how the craft started, kind of like trying to monopolize on like the whole craft thing. But typically you would want to go get an apprenticeship, you want to build your portfolio, you want to actually study where tattooing came from before you actually try to chase an apprenticeship, and if you're going to go for an apprenticeship, it's better to go in person. Most older tattoo artists who are willing to teach you are not really about like the younger kids who are just like calling around like, hey, like, are you guys hiring apprentices or anything like that? They want you to show your face and show that you actually want to be there, and just show the drive that you actually want the apprenticeship. So yeah, as far as schooling goes, it's that's what I would recommend. That's not necessarily the route that I took. I was a delinquent kid, as you can tell. Kid with silver teeth, that's usually like what they say. And I actually started at home. There's a lot of artists that I've met that actually started at home, and we just kind of practice on our friends and whatnot. That's usually how one side of tattooing gets started. I would definitely, coming from that background, I would still recommend getting an apprenticeship because I would have learned a lot faster, would have got here a lot quicker. It was a lot of trial and error, and it's super discouraging at first, but you keep going with it, don't get discouraged, and yeah, you're gonna make it. You're gonna get out of it what you put into it. So it's one of those things. You just got to be very determined, very motivated to actually make it happen for yourself. Don't be afraid. It's going to get discouraging. Everybody sucks at first, but yeah, as long as you keep going and you keep that drive, you're going to be okay. I actually was just getting tattooed. I got tattooed by one of my friends who was actually roughly the same age as me. We were both in high school, and I got tattooed in his living room kind of thing. From there, it's just sparked that interest. I've always been very artistic, and at different lists, I've always been really into like heavily tattooed people because I was a musician since I was maybe around 12 years old up until now. I do music, but that's kind of like what introduced me to like the whole culture of tattoos. I've always knew that I wanted to be heavily tattooed since I was a young kid. Yeah, like I said, just getting tattooed, that will really spark your interest, especially if you're a curious person like I am. I saw the whole process, and I saw my friend at 17 years old being financially stable. I was like, yo, that's great. In most cases, people like to push like schooling, which I mean is still a good route, but like it's one of those things where like if you have passion for something, you can find a craft that makes you happy at the end of the day, and it'll be worth the same as if you went to school. Like this is just like a different version of school. As you can say, a lot of people don't really know about it. Like they know about tattoos, but they don't really know the whole culture and everything that comes with it. And yeah, honestly, like getting tattooed was that gateway for me for sure. So I would say that's very situational. It really depends on what kind of shop you're at. As far as myself, like Myra, we actually work in the same building, and it's kind of like our own little building. So there's days where there's just two of us in there. So there's days where I'll be by myself or she'll be by herself. But if you work at a shop where it's more of like an open layout, you're gonna have more than one coworker. Usually it would be anywhere from like I would say 4 to 10 people sometimes. It just really depends on what shop you're at, how big it is, and how much room, and you know. Um, but in some cases, it's really situational. Tattooing can go every which way. You can approach tattooing any way you want to. Like, you can be at a busy street shop and have a lot of coworkers, and you guys are always working next to each other every day. Or there's people who do private studios, where they're just kind of like them and maybe one other person, 2 other people, and it really just depends. It's very situational. Yes, I would say my old jobs are useful nowadays just because it fueled my flame. It made me not want to be there, you know. Having like normal jobs. I actually was a cart pusher. That was like one of my first jobs. I worked at Walmart pushing carts in the summer, in the winter. I was in the rain, in the sun, 100-degree weather, and I was like, I hate it here. Like, I do not want to do this for the rest of my life. Like, so, like I said, it fueled my flame. I definitely wanted to move forward and like actually have a better life and do something I actually love doing. I was already like learning how to tattoo, and it actually helped too, because I would tell my coworkers like, hey, I tattoo if you guys need any work or anything like that. So if anything, it kind of helped build that clientele. um, and I've also worked at a warehouse right after that, and that sucked too. It was like 10 hours in my own head, and that job actually, they required us to be alone. So um yeah, when you're that long in your head during work at a job you hate, it's not pretty. But like I said, it fueled my flame to want to get out of there, to push forward, to chase more. So I recommend having a crappy job or two, just to kind of gain that motivation, because trust me, you don't want to be there. As far as equipment goes, like I said, though I keep repeating this because tattooing is very diverse and you can approach it every which way. The way I started was on, just regular paper, pens, pencils. Um, you use a lot of tracing paper, you waste a lot of trees. So now that we have technology, we got iPads and stuff, which I mean, they work wonders, especially in our career, because like I mentioned earlier, people like to change their ideas, or people be like, hey, like I actually don't like that, or you'll show them this design you worked so hard on and you're so excited about, and then they're like, oh, it's cool, but can you do this? And I'm like, if I would have drew that on paper, I would be really bummed. But like, here with like the new technology and stuff, it's actually easier. You can like throw another layer over, as if you were putting tracing paper over your last drawing. So it's essentially the same thing. It's just how you use it. So that's kind of like the drawing aspect of it. As far as the actual tattooing goes, we have tattoo machines. They're not called guns. Don't call them guns. Tattoo artists get mad. They're tattoo machines, and we use things like needles, rubber bands, tubes, grommets. Again, those are all very personal and preference. So some people don't use grommets. People use paper towels. Like, it's just very like, just how you want to go about it, how you're taught, whatever you're around when you first started, that's usually like the kind of the habits you'll have until you educate yourself and you start making your own habits. That's kind of how tattooing is. You're very influenced by the people that you've started with. So um yeah, as far as that, I want to say that's pretty much it. We do use, it's called transfer paper, to make the stencils and stuff. Some people hand stencil, so like people who do portraits and that sort of style of black and gray realism, they'll usually like take a photo, they'll print out the size that they need, and they'll make a stencil from that. Versus like people like me and Myra, we like to draw and make like a line drawing of like whatever design we like or are tattooing that day. And we have this thing called the thermofax, because we don't got that hand stencil. All we gotta do is make a copy, size it up, throw it through that little fax machine, and it comes out perfect. So no need to do it twice. Actually, yeah, I do. I at one point in my career, I was traveling like every month. I was literally for 2 years just doing these things called tattoo conventions. So they're actually really fun, and it's a good place to network. It's a good place to meet more people and just really get into your community. like I mentioned before, like tattooing is a culture, like it's a lifestyle. As you can see, like I got the comment the other day. I was actually on vacation in Hawaii, and I went to go get some what is it called, shaved ice, and the guy was like, "Hey, you missed the spot." Yeah, and I was like, "That's funny," and I do. I'm missing a spot right here, but um, it's very cultured, and it's just very culture driven. Like it's one of those things. Like if you're gonna be into tattooing, like just respect the craft for what it is, the history, the people who came before you. Like I feel like the problem nowadays with like younger tattooers are like they just kind of skip all that. Like I'm a younger tattooer myself. I'm only 24, but it's one of those things. Like I care to like look for the people that came before me, and actually cared to like indulge in the culture, But traveling definitely did help me, not only with motivation, but it helped me with networking. Now I have friends out in the East Coast, which is the other side of our country, and there's people that I know in between from the East Coast to the West Coast, and it's all thanks to traveling, and it before, to me, like I thought traveling was out of reach, I thought you had to like be retired to travel, and I'm getting to do that at 24. And when I was traveling heavily, I was not even 21 yet. I was only like 20 years old. 19 to like 21 was when I was traveling every month, And some months I would go to San Francisco, then I'll go to Chicago, and then I'll go back to San Francisco, and then I'll go to Philadelphia. Like it's just a lot of moving, But like I said, it's just like it really like fueled my flame as well, Like getting to experience that, getting to be in a new place and be like, wow, like one time I ended up in New York. I was in Times Square, and I was just like in disbelief. I was like, I can't believe I'm here, And I called my brother because he always wanted me to go to New York, so I FaceTimed him, and I was like, look, dude, like check this out, So it's not only motivating for me, but it's also motivating for like my family and peers, because especially like growing up Hispanic, like my family, they weren't fond of tattoos. They thought like, what the heck, you look like a cholo, But I'm like, I'm not a cholo, like I don't have gang tattoos, I have art. I have, this is like the style of art that I have is American traditional. It's Western tattooing that came before all that like gel kind of like tinta stuff, that fine line stuff, which is, I mean, it's not bad. It's actually more of a style now where people like, you don't have to be associated in gangs to like that kind of Chicano culture style tattoos, the fine line tattoos. But again, growing up Hispanic, they see one tattoo and they just think like, oh, gang related, But it was cool to be able to like travel and like open their perception up, because perception is everything in life, and that's, I don't judge them for having that perception. They just grew up in a different time, Nowadays it's more art, it's in the mainstream, it's more glamorized, there's TV shows, there's competitions, there's conventions, there's literally like, that just kind of goes to show like what route tattooing is headed, Yeah, again, traveling definitely fueled that flame. It changed the perception of my family, and I got to travel doing what I love, Like, there's actually, I have a funny story because so I didn't really grow up too close to my father, and he called me when I was actually at my first job. I like had just got into my first job. He called me. He was like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm at work. He's like, what? You got a job? Where do you work at? And I was like, the tattoo shop. He was like, when are you going to get a real job? That's what he told me. And I was like, oh, okay, And then now fast forward a couple months later, the following year, he calls me again. He's like, hey, what are you doing? He calls like once every 5 months, whatever. And I was in Philadelphia. And I was like, oh, I'm in Philadelphia. And he's like, Philadelphia? What are you doing out there? And I'm like, tattooing. And he was like, oh, okay, well, get home safe. I'm like, like that alone was that me just traveling from one coast to the other coast, doing what I love, like it puts everything in perception, it's not just a delinquent craft. It's not just like there's more to it. It's a craft, it's a culture. It's everything that you probably would have never thought tattooing actually was, So it's a beautiful thing. Again, very situational tattooing. different types of skin. You'll get the different reactions. You gotta really know about tattooing to kind of cater to a certain type of person's skin. Like if they're like a darker complexion, you don't want to use brighter colors because they don't come out as bright, they come out more muted. So it's just things like that. Everybody's skin is different. There's some people's skin that like will eat up the ink and it just loves it. It strives. You can pull clean lines, solid shading, one pass. And then there's people who have leather skin. There's people who have like construction skin that's like it's super hard to work on. Like no matter how good of a tattoo artist you are, like sometimes it just like won't look as cool as you want it to. But that just comes with the craft. Like you just got to understand and not beat yourself up over it, that or make yourself feel like you're a bad artist just because you couldn't tattoo this certain person's skin. It's literally not all on you. There's different factors. um I will say this, like working on skin, nothing compares to it. Like I started learning, I was literally like I would come home and like I got like a little like starter Amazon kit, and I had an orange tree in my backyard. So I was like tattooing oranges because the ink will stay, and it was like kind of helping me with like my hand, keeping steady and stuff. But nothing compares to real skin. Even the bad skin, like it's still like nothing compares to it. So um the disadvantage, like I said, it's mostly just like different types of skin and just knowing how to approach that certain type of skin. So if you're inexperienced, it's definitely a lot harder, but it's all trial and error. Like you learn within the time that you're doing it. The more you do it, like everything comes with repetition. Yeah. That's pretty much it. That kind of like sums it up, because that's really like the only like disadvantage I would say. It's just kind of like different types. So tattoo artists, we actually do, but it's one of those things, like if you apply yourself, if you're staying busy on top of your clientele and doing the most that you can to network and build that clientele, you'll be solid. I'm actually 24 years old and I just bought my first home 2 months ago. So, it's I've only been at it for, like I said, 5 years and like 5 months. It's like it's not that long, but like I said, if you're determined, you're motivated, you set goals for yourself and you just make your way to move towards them, you can do anything, honestly. Not even just tattooing, like in general. Like you just have to have that mindset, and everybody has it. It's literally just applying it. Anybody can hear somebody say like, oh well, you're motivated so it's easy. It's like, no, it's like you got to go through these experiences, and you go one way or the other. Like you go through a bad experience and you could either go worse or be optimistic. Same thing with like being motivated. You see this concept and you're like, I can't do that. Well, it's like you're already failing because you're like, nah, I can't do that. Like everybody can do it. It's literally all of my mindset. So we do make a healthy living as much as you put into it. So what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. Yeah, I definitely will 100% back that, because I've been able to do things that I've never thought I would be able to do. Um, like I said, like even purchasing my first home at 24 was like, I tell people, people ask and they're like, you know, I'm like, yeah, it's because I do what I love and I love doing it. And I don't mind sitting in this chair. Like, yeah, I might have a little scoliosis, but that's fine. That's a small price to pay for, to be able to hold my own as a young adult, I should say. I don't feel like a kid no more. I feel like an old man. So, um, yeah, I definitely feel like it's definitely healthy living if you put in the work. So, something I will say, as a tattoo artist, I do wear myself on my sleeves. So, like I said before, people grew up in different times, so they have different perceptions of tattoos. So it just really depends on like who is looking at you. And there's people that appreciate it, there's people who appreciate it. So I've gotten rejected from entering places just because I'm fully covered in tattoos. Like there's some I used to go out with my friends and stuff, and they stopped letting me into certain bars just because I had my face tattoos, you know. But they usually try to stick the tattoo stigma towards bad stuff, like gangbangers, bikers, whatever. And they don't really like look at it as an art for like what it really is. And you can tell in the tone of voice that I have that I'm not a gangbanger or biker or anything like that. I'm just like, I'm a kid who loves art and loves what they do. So like I said, there are some disadvantages especially if you're gonna wear your heart on your sleeves, you should say, um, just because you can't really control other people's perceptions and you can't really control what other people think, say, or do. But as a human, and I think everybody should know this, that whatever somebody else does, thinks, they do towards you in a negative way, whatever, it doesn't define who you are, and you shouldn't let it define who you are. At the end of the day, it's super important, the life rule that I live by, because it is hard. Like if sometimes I'll walk out, it's like you get a sense of anxiety being out, because there's people who like don't know how to look or like glance and they stare, and it's like I've grown to like already kind of be adjusted to it. I just go about my day. I really don't care what anybody else is doing. I live in my own little world, and I go to the market, I come back home, So like I said, there's just like there's that aspect of it where like, people probably might not have the best perception of me just by looking at me. But I think if somebody like people, or the people that give me a chance and actually care to talk to me and like ask about it, they're usually interested, they're usually like, oh wow, I actually had this experience recently. I went to Vegas and I was waiting for a friend, and they weren't there yet. They missed their flight. So I went to go eat dinner because I was starving. And I go to this really nice high-end Japanese restaurant in the casino, and I sit next to this couple, and they're like older, you can tell the guy was like a business owner and whatnot. And I got this like weird feeling, that he was going to talk to me. And of course, he leans over and he tells me, he's like, I'm sorry, man. I'm just looking at you and I'm thinking to myself, either this kid has a story or he's an MS-13. And I laughed. I have a great sense of humor, so like I laughed at it. If I was the wrong person, I mean, maybe that would have ended up, another route, but I'm not that person, And I laughed. I was like, yeah, most people think it's the second one, but I was like, no, man, like I'm just a kid who loves what he does. And he started asking me about it. Like, what do you do for a living? I was like, I'm a tattoo artist. And he was like, oh, do you have a profile, Instagram? Do you have anything like that? And I showed my Instagram, I was like, yeah, check this out. Like, this is my work. And this guy's perception completely flipped. Like, he literally was like, wow, like scrolling through my work. He's like, this is amazing. He told me like 5 different times from like different tattoos, and he's like, I'm sorry I keep saying this now, but this is amazing. He's all showing the bartenders, he's all showing his friend that he was with, and like we ended up like just chopping it up, and I'm sure I changed that dude's perception that day, and he ended up wanting to take a picture with me. Like I was like, I went from MS-13 to famous, like in a heartbeat, just because like I showed him, I was able to talk to him. He cared to ask, and that's what I thanked him for, because like, yes, his comment was a little ignorant, but at the same time, I understand, I'm an understanding person. So like I told him, I was like, hey man, like, thank you for actually asking, thank you for not just staring at me and judging, and it definitely, it changes the whole mood, because when people are like staring at you and making you feel that like that weird, like you can tell they're judging you, it's not a comfortable feeling, and I think at first it's definitely overwhelming, but like I said, I get older, at least, like I stopped caring what other people think and like their perception of me, because at the end of the day, doesn't define me. That's not who I am. You can think, I mean, I know I look crazy right now. I usually have hair. It's one of those things, like if you give me the chance, I'll explain to you, yeah, I would say that's probably like one of the disadvantages. As far as like pros for the stigma, it's cool because like some people, like I said, they care to ask, and it's like boom, they find out you're a tattoo artist and they're like, wow, let me check out your work. And then sometimes in some cases they'll come get tattooed. So I've been in Uber rides and stuff a lot, and like I've tattooed a few of my Ubers, I've tattooed a few people I've literally met going to the market, like just because their perception wasn't as ignorant and they care to ask, they're like, wow, I love your work. Or they notice good work. They notice when a tattoo is different from like a prison cell tattoo or a garage tattoo versus a professional quality tattoo. So yeah, it's one of those things. It can go either way. So you say that, I have a PMA tattooed on my face, and it stands for positive mental attitude. So, in my perception, at least, is mostly positive uh, things that come out of being a tattoo artist. Everyone likes tattoos, especially nowadays. I think the younger generations, especially like the people that I'm probably speaking to, um, it's just like not as bad of a stigma as it was back in the day. So when you meet certain people and they find out you're a tattoo artist, people are instantly like, oh, I want to get this or I want to do that. But what's cool about it is that like if they provide a service, you guys can barter. I've done that. I actually recently done that. One of my clients' grandpa, I gave him his first tattoo. He's 65 years old, and he does landscaping and stuff. So he actually cut my grass. I paid him and everything, and then he actually told my client, hey, tell your tattoo artist if I put in a new sprinkler system for him, will he give me my first tattoo? So yeah, I literally like, I gave him his first tattoo. It took maybe an hour, and I got a new sprinkler system for my house, and all it did was cost me my time, So there's a lot of benefits like that where in some cases you could barter for service. Um, and like I said, at the end of the day, like I'm just extremely happy doing what I do. Like I wake up every day and like I'm not like, oh, I have to go clock in or I have to work. I'm like, cool, I get to go to work, I get to like, just be grateful, like literally everything that I have, from material to mentality to physical, anything, it's all thanks to tattooing. Like I I can't stress that enough. Like if you love something and you give it your all, you're passionate about something, it'll give you that same love right back. And I think that's super important, because there's a lot of people who are like they'll start something and they won't give it enough time, they're like, oh, it didn't work the first time, so it's not for me. It's like, no, that's not the case ever. Anything worth working for is never going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of work, and that's with anything, whether it be tattooing, whether it be school, whether it be whatever you're passionate about, whatever route you want to take. At the end of the day, you just got to give it your all. um, you're gonna, I keep saying this, but you're gonna get what you put into it. What you put into it is what you're gonna get out of it, and that's literally with everything. um, as far as like to continue the positivity on like tattooing, like I said, mentioned earlier too, like it gave me the opportunity to travel, gave me the opportunity to go, you know, all over the US already. I want to go out of country, but we're in a pandemic. I got my passport right before the pandemic, and I'm like, rats, I just missed it. But either way, like I said, I get to wake up every day and love what I do. I get to have a roof over my head, I have food in my belly, I can support my family. Yeah, it's literally, there's a lot of great things that come out of just loving what you do. At the end of the day, it doesn't have to be just tattooing, but just loving what you do and giving it your all, you'll get a lot back. You love it, and it's gonna love you. So some negative things about tattooing, I will say this is, especially once you become more of a busy tattooer, I feel like, at least for me, my problems have been like I've neglected myself a little bit. I've neglected like my health. Like I have horrible eating habits. I'm gonna be honest, but it's just because I'm so involved in my job and work, and it's not just something where I can clock in and start working. It's more of like it's a lot of preparation, and really depending on like what you do. Like I've recently gotten into large scale work, so doing back pieces and sleeves. Like I'll outline the whole thing in a day, but that means I got to design the whole thing in a day. So it's not just like I'm doing one piece and then another piece and another piece. It's more of like I got to design a whole sleeve that's all cohesive, a whole back piece that's all cohesive. So that takes time, that takes a lot of time out of especially my mornings. Usually I start my first appointment at 1 p.m. and most people will be like, oh, you have the whole morning. But if you're like me, I'm not a morning person, and like, I mean, I'll get up around like 8, 9 o'clock, which I mean, is still fairly early, but like my morning flies because I gotta draw for my appointment and I gotta get ready for work, and then I still gotta go to the shop before even 1 p.m. comes around because I gotta go set up, make the stencil, so I will say that it's just like if you become a busier tattooer, just find that balance because that's like one thing that can become a negative thing, neglecting yourself, your health, or, you know, um, like, I mean, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, of course, but it's literally like I mentioned before, like the stigmas and stuff where people are like judging and stuff. I mean, like I said, you should never let people like bring you down in any which way, but it could be a negative to somebody who is not mentally ready to take that, yeah, it's not much negative. You do get scoliosis and like arthritis and stuff, so be prepared for that, Oh, another thing too, I just realized it, but being a tattoo artist, we don't come with 401k, we don't come with health insurance, we don't there's a lot of that. That's something that like I think is super important for people to know because if you are going to get into this industry, I'd highly recommend starting something like that retirement fund, whether it be like, a retirement fund or insurance, IUHP, we have things that you could do to like kind of make up for the benefits that we don't get as a self-employed entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it, Um, so yeah, keep that in mind. That's super important. And I think that's super important for everybody in any career. You should have benefits. You should have at least health insurance or 401k, So um, yeah, as far as that goes, something else that's negative, they hurt. Tattoos hurt. So, as much as you love them, yeah, they hurt. um, yeah, like I said, there's not much negative in it. Like those main things that probably can make or break the whole career for somebody, It really depends on what kind of person you are. But at the end of the day, if, like it's not as bad as it seems, Like I said, if you just make the effort to, go out and start a retirement or go out and get insurance, like you're gonna be fine. So I wish I would have knew that about the whole like health insurance and 401k thing. I would have really loved to like know that from the get-go, kind of just went into it like, I'm excited, I'm gonna do it, but as far as that, I mean, that's really like the only thing. It's just kind of like the whole health aspect of it where, like taking care of yourself is important. I wish that somebody would told me when I first started, hey, you should start retirement, because I have a good chunk of change in there by now, it's like 5 years consecutively tattooing. It would have been helpful to know that early on. It's still not late for me to do that, but it's one of those things, like that's something I would have liked to know before. And yeah, just like I said, like more of like the health, like I mean, like the whole like you gotta think we're hours a day just kind of hunched over tattooing, we're like now every time I move, like I feel like I'm breaking something, like it's like I'll move and it like I hear my knee pop or like my ankles or my wrists, it's like another thing. Like just mostly about like staying on top of your health. I think that would have been super good to know because tattooing, it's like it doesn't really seem like a lot of manual labor, but over time on your wrists and your hands, you do some damage, and then also on your back, on your lower spine, yeah, and like I said, like there's sometimes we'll have like digestive issues because you're not moving. You got to think people are supposed to be moving all the time, and if we're at work all day, just kind of like hunched over, that you can get pretty stiff pretty fast. So like I said, I just kind of go back to the whole health thing. I think it's just like knowing that I should have taken care of myself better to like avoid all the early arthritis, or not arthritis, but like just like early dysfunctions of my body, because of tattooing. Because it's like mentally draining, it's physical, it's you got to think we're in our heads the whole day, so your head is just as important as taking care of your health. Mental health is just as important because in mind always. As far as balance goes for tattooing, I mostly live at work just because on my free time I feel like I would just sit and not do much. So I prefer to work and I prefer to, you know, do what I love to do. But I will say this, like balance is super important. You can't neglect other aspects of your life if you're gonna be taking tattooing serious, because you can only work as much as your body will let you. And if you're neglecting your body, if you're neglecting any other aspect of your life, like it's just gonna come back to you neglecting your craft and your love for tattooing. So balance is super important. Um, I think as far as tattooing all day, I don't think it's the healthiest choice, but it's one of those things you're very eager to be in the chair tattooing, creating art, but at the same time you should be just as eager to um, balance the rest of your life out, whether it be personal life or love life or work life, all those things. They're really important. So you don't want to neglect one or the other. You just want to find that healthy balance. The way to figure it out, honestly, is just get tattooed. See how you like it. If you love it, then great. It's one of those things. Like as far as in my perception and what happened to me was I got tattooed and I loved it. I instantly loved it, and yes, it hurt, but like I was just it's one of those things. Tattooing, the concept of tattooing is actually more. It's a little deeper than just a tattoo. You got to think you're willingly putting yourself through pain for a reward. um, you're literally paying somebody to hurt you, but like it's very rewarding at the end of the day, especially if you get something that you love, something that you're in most cases, you'll look at your tattoo, you're like, wow, I can't believe that's on me, it looks sick, it's like you get excited, and tattoos will do that to people, tattoos will build confidence, that's what it did for me, it's just kind of like a skinny kid who like, like I didn't necessarily have like my head on straight, but once I started getting tattooed, like I feel like I found myself a lot through tattooing, like it it just it hits it hits different. I guess you should say, like I feel like most kids use that saying now, but it just hits different. You definitely you feel a lot better. You know, um, if you have like confidence issues and stuff, like I did growing up, I was very like drawn to tattooing because it made me feel better about myself. And the fact that you're willing to endure that pain, and it kind of gives you like that, like wow, like I can do that. Like yeah, that sucked, or damn, that was horrible, but like still made it through. And that just kind of goes to show how life is. It's a life concept or value. Like no matter how crazy or how much life hurts, you just stick it out, you like tough it out, and you're fine. At the end of the day, time heals all. No matter what you go through, it might hurt during, it might hurt a little bit after, but in a week or two, I promise you're not going to think about it. You're going to be thinking of the next one. That's usually how it goes. The last piece of wisdom that I can say, whatever route you decide to take, as long as you're happy, don't worry about material. Don't worry about, like, of course, most people are like money driven. They want to have a good life and stuff. But I think something that's worth way more than any material money amount, anything like that, is just happiness. You got to live your life as happy as you could while you're here, because tomorrow's not promised. You can be here today and gone tomorrow. And if you were to sit and ask yourself, like, hey, do I feel fulfilled with how I spent my day? Was I happy today? Did I, wake up and feel gratitude? that's what it's all about. It's all about energy and gratitude and, mentality, like how you perceive life. And I think that alone, that concept alone of having a good mentality will take you far in whatever career you want to end up taking to tattooing. And that's fine. Everybody has their niche, everybody has their passions. Um, you know, definitely, definitely just be as happy as you could be, and don't let anybody bring you down, because like I said before, whatever anybody else says or does or thinks about you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't pertain to you. It doesn't determine who you are. So just be happy at the end of the day. Don't worry, be happy, live your life to the fullest, because life is short.